Below are two ready-to-record VO scripts in a natural American storytelling voice, first-person cinematic, and paced for 0.9x reading. I changed all key names and locations in the long cut for exclusivity as requested. I kept the shortcut closer to the original beats and names. Long cut, 13 to 15 minutes. About 1-800-2000 words. All names. Details changed. I'll tell you exactly where it started, because moments like this have a way of burning themselves into your memory. It was a warm afternoon in Pine Hollow, Colorado. Front yards, smelling like cut grass. Kids leaving bikes in the driveway. That perfect kind of quiet suburb hum that makes you think, yeah, this is where we're going to breathe again. My wife Lena had her sun hat on, and garden gloves up to her wrists, trimming the roses we had planted when we moved in. And I was on the porch with a glass of iced tea, just letting my shoulders drop for the first time in a while. 20 years I spent in the teams, in places where the wind tasted like dust and metal. And all I wanted now was a porch, a wife at peace, and birds loud enough to drown out the old echoes. You know what I mean? That's when they rolled up. A black SUV, windows too dark for a neighborhood like ours. 3 guys in matching navy polos that said, HOA security, in white stitching utility belts, like they'd raided a clearance bin. Badges that caught the sun, but not in the way a real badge does. The tall one led the pack gelled hair clipboard, tucked like a trophy. A smile that didn't touch his eyes. He took one look at Lena's roses and announced loud enough to let the cul-de-sac hear. Regulation 14C landscaping obstruction. You're out of compliance. Lena paused. Her clippers tilted her head and said, Sir, these roses have lived here longer than you have. He took a step closer. A little too close, the way guys do when they think the space they occupy is automatically theirs. We're stepping up enforcement, he said, tapping the fake badge. No more warnings, there will be a fine. The name embroidered on his polo read, Pike. Dylan Pike. I'm not a man who likes trouble, but I know what it looks like when it pulls into your driveway and starts measuring your grass. I called the actual HOA that night, and the nice lady on the phone said, Sir, we don't have security. Never have. That's when the air changed. You ever feel a house tense up, like the walls are listening, like a place that was supposed to cradle you is suddenly on alert? The neighbors started talking in whispers that week, not out loud. Just the kind of parking lot confessions people make when they're afraid of being overheard. Mrs. Ayers across the street said they threatened to fine her over curtains. A teenager said one of the guys snatched his basketball and barked. Driveways aren't for games, and the Chen family found a citation taped to their mailbox that looked official until you actually read it. Then it read like a bad costume. I ran in places where a uniform could get you killed, so I recognize authority that's earned and authority that's stolen. Those men were wearing pretend power like Halloween costumes in July, and the neighborhood did what neighborhoods do when they're not sure. They complied. A few days later, I saw Pike circling Mr. Chen's shrubs with his clipboard, like a vulture looking for a reason to land. I set my groceries on the truck and walked over, not looking to escalate, just letting my voice carry. You with the HOA, I asked, or do you just enjoy pointing at bushes? He squared up that little smirk that says I've gotten away with this before. We're the ones keeping order, sir, he said. Rules mean nothing if no one enforces them. I told him I'd called the real office, and they'd never heard of him, or his boys. One of his sidekicks shifted on his heels. Pike didn't blink. Careful, he said, this isn't the military, you don't call the shots here. I smiled without joy. Then don't act like you do. He leaned closer, lower voice now. Let's see how tough you are when your wife breaks the rules. I didn't move. You learn in my line of work that there are two kinds of men who talk like that. The ones who want to fight, and the ones who need an audience. He needed both. We left it there, but not really. That night, a car slowed in front of our house and someone said from the window, "Nice flowers, ma'am. Shame if someone wrote you up." The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was enough to tell me I wasn't sleeping easy until this ended. 2 mornings later, Lena tried to reset the day. You know. Tea on the porch, morning birds, soft hands in the soil. I was right there, a few steps away, letting her handle her space because my wife isn't fragile, and I don't need to be the loudest man in the yard. Pike walked up with his 2 shadows, like he owned the deed to our block. "We've got a problem," he announced. Lena stood up slowly, brushed dirt off her gloves and said, "The only problem I see is a costume." The smirk fell off his face for half a heartbeat, then came back meaner. "Maybe your husband filled your head with that Navy toughness," he said. "But you're not him." She didn't flinch. "And you're not security." She said, "You're a bully in a polo." What happened next still rings in my ears, like a door slam in an empty hallway. His hand came up and across, fast and ugly, and the crack of it rolled down our street. Hoses dropped, bikes skid on concrete, and for a second, even the birds shut up. Lena's hand went to her cheek, not out of surrender, but the way a person touches a fresh burn and decides what to do with the pain. I stood. I didn't rage, didn't roar, didn't posture. I just stood. "Apologize to my wife," I said. "Steady, or I make sure you never touch anyone again." Pike tried to laugh and failed. "You think you scare me, soldier boy?" he said. "You're retired. You're nothing now." Yeah, that happened. I don't do speeches in moments like that. I do physics. His wrist, his elbow, the lever, his own shoulder gave me when he tried to pull away. I put him on the ground with his face in our grass before his mouth could form another sentence. The first buddy lunged and got a boot to the chest that took his breath all the way to last Tuesday. The second swung wild. I took his wrist and turned it until his knees understood the conversation. I didn't enjoy it, but I won't lie. There is a deep relief in stopping a man who thinks he can hurt your wife and walk away like it's a lesson she needed. Phones were out. Neighbors filming the quiet on the street turned into a hum of voices. Some shock, some relief, a few people finally saying what they'd been swallowing for weeks. I leaned to Pike and said in a voice I save for men who mistake mercy for weakness, "You ever lay a hand on her again, or anyone here, and your next worry won't be a fine, it'll be walking." That's when I heard the sirens. Real authority. Lights hit the houses in bands of blue and red, and the very first thing the deputy did was look from Lena's cheek to the fake badges, and you could see the decision fall into place. The neighbors didn't hesitate. Carla from 2 doors down spoke first, voice shaking, but aiming right. "He hit her," she said, pointing at Pike. "We've all been harassed. We've all paid fake fines. We've been scared in our own yards." Mr. Chen raised his hand like it was a school assembly and told them about the bogus citation. Mrs. Ayers admitted she'd given them $200 over curtains because she was afraid of retaliation. The deputy checked the badges, checked the IDs, shook his head, and said the word you want to hear in moments like this. Bogus. They cuffed the 3 of them. Pike tried to spit something tough on his way into the car, but the door shut on it. I wish I could tell you the street just exhaled and moved on, but fear doesn't leave with a siren. It lingers. It asks who you are when the lights fade. The officers came back an hour later with more. Turns out Pike had priors. Intimidation fraud in another state. The kind of charges that sound like a man who goes town to town looking for people who trust the sound of a badge more than their gut. They said there would be charges here too. Impersonating an officer harassment assault, maybe extortion, if they could trace the money. I asked the only question that mattered to me. What about the people he scammed? Do they get made whole? The sergeant hesitated the way lawmen do when they've seen more than they can fix in a day. We'll do what we can, he said. Your statements help. He looked at my hands at Pike's men rubbing ribs and wrist and added, and next time, sir, call us sooner. I nodded. Next time, I said try to get here before my wife gets hit. It wasn't a threat, just a boundary. That night, we didn't let the silence take over. We filled it. Mr. Chen opened his garage and dragged out folding chairs, and the whole block showed up like it was a block party, except nobody brought potato salad. We brought our fear and put it in the middle of the room where we could see it. Carla stood up first and said, what I wish she hadn't had to say. I should have spoken sooner. People nodded eyes on the floor. Me too, me too, me too. I told them the truth. The teams taught me the truth. My own wife reminded me of, with the way she stood in our yard and used her voice, even when it shook. Silence is fertilizer for bullies. I said it grows them tall. Speaking up doesn't make you reckless. It makes you a neighbor, Tom. A guy I barely knew beyond a wave crossed his arms and said, easy for you to say. Cole, you've seen war. We've got jobs. Kids, we can't get into a fight. I said I'm not asking you to fight. I'm asking you to stand together. If Pike had walked up to my wife and seen 30 of you watching, he never would have raised a hand. Predators hunt the isolated, not the herd. Lena took my hand and stood, cheeks still red, but eyes clear. He wanted me small, she said. He wanted me embarrassed and quiet. I'm not, and neither are you. That's when the room changed. Fear didn't disappear. It just had to share space with something sturdier. The neighbors put numbers into phones. We set up a group chat and we decided that if someone got hassled again, we wouldn't whisper about it on Tuesday, we'd show up on Monday. We planned evening walks, not like a militia, not trying to be cops, just being visible, present, hard to push around. And in the days that followed, you could feel Pine Hollow reset. Kids back on bikes. Mrs. Ayres knitting on her porch like the world owed her some peace, and she was collecting the Chens trimming hedges, without looking over their shoulders, that black SUV nowhere to be seen. A local paper ran a little story with a headline that made me cringe and smile at the same time. Fake HOA enforcers exposed by residents. They called our house for a quote, and I told them the most honest thing I know, huh? It wasn't me. It was us. Weeks went by, the court dates lined up like pins, and we learned what we always learn in these stories. The system moves slower than the offense, but it moves. People asked me if I'd do anything differently. I tell them the part I wish I could change is the part where his hand touched my wife's face, and I couldn't. After that, I don't apologize for the way I ended it. I'm not proud of the violence, but I'm not sorry for the line I drew. You know what I mean? Toward sunset one evening, Lena and I sat back on that porch swing. She touched the roses, then the faint shadow of a bruise you could barely see anymore, and said, every time I look at these, I don't want to remember the slap. I told her, then don't Remember who showed up after. Peace isn't something you find and hold like a seashell. It's something you build and rebuild and defend when a man who loves cheap power tries to take it. And since this is a story I'm telling to you, and not just to myself, I'll leave you where I'm still standing, in a neighborhood that decided to be a neighborhood again. You might say I went too far, that a husband shouldn't lay hands on anybody, that we should let the badges reel or not sort it out. Or you might say a man crossed a line when he hit a woman in her own yard and got taught about consequences fast. Me, I think the truth lives in the space between those two takes. So tell me this, when pretend authority shows up on your block and starts writing rules in permanent marker, do you comply to keep the peace? Do you wait and hope, or do you stand next to each other and say, not here, not today? Drop your line.